Hey everyone, since I started the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group many years ago, there's been no shortage of questions regarding running of a urology practice and including instruments that I use in the office in the daily operation of the urology practice. I'm going to answer a DM from someone I've never met, and we're not friends on Facebook, but he's a member of the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, so I figured I'm going to answer it. While I'm here in the office, I have to do something and come in, so I figure I'm just going to drop a quick video. Michael asked, this came from yesterday morning. Good morning, Dr. Lim. My name is Michael, and I joined the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group several months ago, and I found it to be extremely helpful and very thankful for you providing this opportunity for collaboration with urology professionals everywhere. I'm reaching out as I am assisting a longtime dear friend to transition from a hospital employment situation to private practice and will serve as his practice manager going forward. We are in the process of assessing equipment for office-based cystoscopy and wanted to know if you would mind sharing any recommendations with respect to vendor and models. We're currently in discussions with Olympus, Storz Telepac, and Wolf Medical. One option that has recently come out of the blue is Endolux camera from Dornier MedTech, which does not require a light source due to the design of the lens. We have not had a demo of the Endolux yet, but have one scheduled next week. And I would greatly appreciate any recommendations you may have based on your experience. And he says that he has actually started the discussion with getting a virtual assistant in his upcoming new practice. So the question is, what do I use and what do I think about the other systems? So when I think about office-based cystoscopy, obviously you want the best image quality and easy to implement and have it readily available, easy for the staff to clean, and not have a lot of breakages because you can't afford it. Most of you don't have 4 scopes like I do. I kind of went overboard. So you don't have a lot of scopes, and you need to keep them running if you're performing a lot of cystoscopies like we all do, because BPH is part and parcel of pretty much every urologist's patient base as far as the conditions that we treat. As part of that evaluation, or as you know, gross hematuria, microhematuria evaluation, incontinence, recurrent UTI, whatever it may be, you're performing a lot of cystoscopies. And if you're injecting Botox, that introduces yet another element when it comes to cystoscopies and cystoscopes. And if you're doing urolifts in the office, then you're talking about using a coupler on a rigid scope and sheath. So that introduces yet another element of complexity when it comes to office cystoscopies. But for most of us, when we perform office cystoscopies, we're talking about a flexible cystourethroScope. You can have the traditional fiber optic scopes that many of us trained on back in the 1980s. You can use that for sure, 1990s. Certainly that is available to you. It is a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable if you were to get the fiber optic scopes. So that means you have a scope and then you attach a camera and then you attach a light source on top of that particular cystoscope. You can reuse that scope. Here you would have to, I'm in my procedure room, so you would put it in the sterilization tray or whatever it may be, however you want to do a high-level disinfection. You have to figure out how you're going to do that and whether or not, well, you're starting a private practice, so I'm assuming you're not going to be working with the hospital. So you have to figure out what is acceptable to you, what you can do in your office if you're starting on your own in a private practice, not as part of a larger organization or as part of a hospital, because those organizations and hospitals have a different standard that you may be forced to comply. And in private practice, it's different than if those standards in the hospital, because they set one standard and that's it. They're not flexible, they're not negotiable, and they're kind of unreasonable, to be absolutely frank. So you are talking about the different types of scopes. You mentioned, Olympus, okay, which happens to be what I use. Behind me here are two Olympus digital. These are digital scopes, not fiber optic, but digital scopes. What I'm sure you all know the difference. Digital means there's a chip at the tip of the scope that is capturing the image, and then the image is then sent digitally via wire to a processor. And this is the processor and the light source in one unit. This is it right here. This is the Olympus CV170. I have two of these. I have two of these setups. I have another one in the other procedure room because I don't want to wait. I want to be able to go from room to room and not have the patients wait for the scopes in the tower and the room to be available. I want to be able to go from room to room to room. Your mileage may vary. And if you were just starting out, you may want to start with one tower, or if you are forward thinking, you can say, hey, I want two towers and negotiate for a better deal on the pricing of these of the equipment. Something else you can consider is purchase used, or you can also lease from vendors like Olympus and Storz. So those are other options. You can definitely work with them. They are more than happy to give you extend credit to you and very generous buying terms because they want to lock you into their family of systems. I've been using this. I started with actually ACMI before ACMI was purchased by Olympus. So now I switched from ACMI to Olympus. Whatever you get into, you tend to stick with that same brand. And I've been using the same brand since I started private practice back in 2006. So they want to lock you into their brand if they can. And they will be more than happy to work with you to make sure that you purchased and use their products. Okay, when it comes to cystoscopes, I'm going to put this aside here. You have the digital imaging, the processor, and also the light source. You need a light source. This particular type of digital scope, this is called, the exact model is CYF V2R. CYF V2R by Olympus. So the light source comes out of here, this opening here, you just stick it in there like that. And then the processor goes, the data gets transmitted here into the processor. So you have one box and you can capture images onto a USB drive if you like. And I have ways to set you up so that you can capture video, but built in, this does not do video. It will capture only still images. But this is it. Your medical assistant will simply plug these two in, you turn it on, and it's ready to go. Obviously, you have to attach your water irrigation through this lure lock in port, and this is it right here. Very easy to use. It's relatively lightweight. It is obviously not as light as a disposable cystourethroskop, but this is what I use. It has worked really well for us. These scopes are just workhorses. If you really take care of them, they will last you a long time. Often the breakages occur because you soak the scopes in the high-level disinfection fluid for too long. And what happens is that the seal, the glue that holds the scopes together, tends to get broken down whenever you soak the scope for too long in the disinfection solution. Most of the breakages occur because of handling. And that's why it's extremely important for you to teach your staff and make sure if you have turnover in staff that they realize how expensive they are to acquire and to repair. And when you're down, it's very, very costly. Thankfully, with good handling, maintenance, and sterilization techniques that we use, these scopes have lasted for years without us having to send it in for repairs. And if you do need to send them in for repairs, you can certainly I mean, just this last 2 days, somebody provided an additional source of used equipment from the office administrator from Las Vegas. She mentioned what she has acquired used equipment from this particular vendor. I have personally used Florida Life Systems, and you can search for them in the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group. I've done videos about the scopes that I've gotten back from them after they've been repaired. Very satisfied with their service. They also sell used equipment, so look into that as well. You can buy new, you can buy used, you can lease the equipment. So those are some of the options when it comes to scopes. You also mentioned Storz Telepack. Now, this system is really, really cool because it allows me to output the video natively to two different outputs. For instance, this image will show up. I'll turn it on here and show you. This image will show up here and over here on this monitor. Let's see if I can show you. If you're designing your office, if you can get a ceiling mounted monitor so that you can move this anywhere you want. If the patient is a male, you can move it above him as he is laying on his back and you're on his right side, in my case. Or if it's a female, you can position the second monitor just right in front of you as you're between her legs performing a cystoscopy. So this particular unit with a little HDMI adapter will output signal to two different sources. And if you want to know how I do that, I created a video many years ago, and it's on YouTube, showing you the exact pieces of equipment that you need so that this one unit will give you two different outputs. The patient can look at the foot of the bed and see that monitor while I'm looking at the second monitor, ergonomically much more comfortable for me when I'm actually performing the cystoscopy. Make sure every chance you get, make sure that your surrounding, your work environment is the most comfortable for you and your staff. And when you're doing a lot of cystoscopies, you don't want to be craning your neck all around like a horror movie. You know how the head turns backwards, and you don't want to have the patient over here and then you have to turn your head over the other way. No bueno. Do not do that. Okay, this box has the ability to output to two different monitors. What I don't like about some of the other manufacturers is that you have to purchase this monitor, which has all the electronics built in, the processor, the light source, everything is built into the monitor. So you have to acquire that monitor. I don't like that. I like to have an independent box. So if that goes out, I can just put another one in there. It's very easy, lightweight. I can mount it anywhere. I can take it anywhere. I can roll this in another room. I'm not stuck on one monitor box. And also, often, whatever you purchase, you want to make sure that it has the ability to give you a secondary output. Whether you want to capture video, if it doesn't have that natively capable, or if you want to output to a second monitor. I found that a second monitor is imperative for me for the ease of use and so that if the patient wants to see that second monitor, I can just tilt it over and then he can see what I'm seeing on that monitor. But I tell him that this monitor is showing you the same thing. I like this. This also has narrowband imaging, which allows you to detect blood vessels and bladder cancer with a little bit greater ease. Some of the subtle changes within the mucosal lining of the bladder. If you turn this on narrowband imaging, you can see the changes within the bladder a little bit easier. I think for most of us, if you take your time and just scan systematically within the bladder that is slightly distended, you're probably not going to miss much, even when you don't use the narrowband imaging. So that's what I like about the Olympus setup. I know the Storz Telepack requires that you use that special big bulky thing that has the electronics and also the monitor built in. I personally don't like that. And you also mentioned Wolf Medical. I am not very familiar with what Wolf has to offer. You also have to keep in mind what type of support locally do you have. Whichever system that you commit to purchasing, you need to make sure that you have very, very good local support, because the local reps will help you with little accessories and things like that that they may be able to just throw in there for you to make sure that you have a smooth transition going from the hospital, working for the hospital, to now having to manage everything yourself. That's great that you are so proactive. Before the practice starts, you're already looking into everything. Cystoscoping, one of the most important pieces of equipment that you will use on a regular basis. I'm sorry, I don't have much information about Wolf. However, when I go to the AUA in about a week or so, I will definitely be checking out the exhibits floor and bringing everyone the latest and the greatest. I did reach out to my local Dornier rep, and I also looked up the Endolux camera system. Endolux Orb, interesting looking thing. It's like a ball, and the ball has a wireless. So first of all, it has a battery. It has the camera built into it. It has wireless capability so that it transmits to a receiver, and you connect the receiver to a monitor, and that's how you get the image. What is really neat is that the top of the dome opens up, and that is the light source, and you attach the light source onto the post of the cystoscope. And they've only shown it, the YouTube videos that I've seen, they've only shown it on a rigid scope. So I don't know how, I assume that it works just the same. You can attach the orb to the lens of the flexible fiber optic scope, and then the light attaches to the light post on the flexible scope. I assume that's how it's going to work when you're using the Endolux Orb by Dornier. I haven't seen it. I've only read about it. I've only seen YouTube videos about it, but that assumes that you are using a fiber optic scope, right? This is a digital scope. Once I like to draw this analogy. It's like high-speed internet and orgasms. Once you experience it, you can never go back. Just like flexible digital scopes, once you start using a digital scope, you can never go back to the crappy image quality with all the pixelation that is inherent in fiber optic scopes. I just can't. So if you don't want to know how good the digital scopes are, don't ever use one, or else you're going to feel like you're missing out. It's such a great difference between the two. Now, if you end up acquiring the system and you have to perform a UroLift procedure, you would have to get a different camera. And that camera has a head that you can open up, and you can attach it to the round lens of the rigid scope. And it's similar to what you use in the operating room. I purchased one that was not HD, not ultra high def, but I believe it's 720 or 1080, but it's not ultra high definition, but it's more than adequate when I attach it to a fiber optic lens to perform UroLifts in the office. And I project the image on this monitor and also that monitor, so the anesthesiologist can see it, I can see it, my assistant can see it, and any visitors can see what I'm doing. So those are some of the things that you may want to consider and think about as you start looking into flexible scopes. If your staff takes care of it carefully, it's going to last a long time. Yes, the initial acquisition cost is quite high, but think about how long you will end up owning that scope and tower. It's going to be a long, long time. Often we are fixated on the initial acquisition cost of whatever the equipment it is that we are thinking about purchasing. But you have to think about the per use, the cost per use. It's actually really, really low if you're considering how many times that you are going to be performing a cystoscopy in your practice lifetime, in your private practice lifetime. Also, there are a lot of used equipment available for you to acquire. Often they come with a warranty. Florida Life Systems is one of those vendors that I've used personally. You may want to consider them. I have no financial relationship with them. So check it out and let me know if you have any comments, any additional questions regarding cystoscopy in the office. When you're doing, if you want to use a rigid scope to inject Botox, and you can use a flexible scope if you want to, but this is where a lot of people, if you work in a surgery center and you own and you have ownership interest, I see a lot of flexible ureteroscopes being broken. You're going to be breaking scopes if you don't follow the basic principles of safe and efficient handling of the scope when you're introducing like a laser fiber or the injection needle through the working channel. You must have the channel straight, not bent in any way when you are using it, when you're inserting any sharp instruments, any straight instrument through the working channel. I don't care if you're in the operating room or if you're in the office, you want to keep it straight. Once you have that thing, whatever instrument sticking out and you can see it, then you can flex and bend the scope. A lot of the injuries or the damage that occurs with these flexible scopes is the urologist will bend the scope, insert, and force the instrument through. They rip through the working channel, the seal on the working channel, and that induces a leak, a fluid leak, and then the image gets shot or the electronics get damaged, and then they have to send the scope in for thousands of dollars of repair every single time. Not to mention the downtime, the decrease in efficiency. So think about the cost per use when you buy one of these, and then this is you're going to be using this so much when you are dealing with BPH. The AUA guidelines for BPH recommend cystoscopy, and also some sort of imaging, and we won't even talk about ultrasounds. That's another big topic that you can go down into many rabbit holes. But you want to think about the cost per use and how often you're going to be using the scope and how much aggravation are you willing to deal with. I can't go back to flexible fiber optic scopes. I have to use the digital scope, and I can't wait for the next iteration of scopes with the higher pixel count on the sensor and smaller sensors. That I hope will revolutionize and advance flexible cystoscopy and ureteroscopy in the operating room and in the office. I'm sure that's coming, and I can't wait to see what's available, what is going to be announced at the AUA. I haven't seen anything in my email, in my inbox, or in my mailbox just yet, but I'm sure there will be some innovations that I can't wait to see it at the AUA. And of course, if I see anything exciting, I will definitely be bringing that information to all of you. And if you're wondering what this is an Aaron 1250. It's the generator that we use to perform bipolar and monopolar cautery. I use this a lot for my vasectomies because I use the bipolar forceps, and you've seen the videos of what I do when I do vasectomies. But this is the generator, and behind me is my GE Logic Book XP. This is the endorectal probe for my ultrasound guided prostate biopsy. This is a very old machine that I purchased, since I started the practice, and it is still running. I think we replaced the battery. I think we replaced the monitor, but it's still working. It's a workhorse. My recommendation is buy the best that you can. Buy the best that you can afford now. Buy the best, and then invest in it, because you're going to be using a lot of this equipment every single day. So buy the best that you can. Buy the best. Cry once and move on, because once you start to practice, you're going to be busier than you know what to do with. So then you have to think about how you want to scale if you want to scale, and you have to start thinking, do I want to take all payers, or do I want to limit myself after you get going? So initially, when you first start, you probably want to take all payers because you want to just get going and you want to show profitability. And then once you get busy, and you will be busy in no time because there's a urology shortage, all right? So urologist shortage, I don't care where you practice, you're probably going to be immediately busy. And if you want marketing techniques, if you want to know how to bring a lot of patients in right away and have loyal patients, happy patients, I'm more than happy to have that discussion so that you can really ramp that up real quickly. All right? Michael, I hope this helped you. I hope this helps everyone who's watching this live stream. Thank you so much for watching, Katina and Aaron and Susan. Appreciate you guys watching. As always, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, agreements, disagreements, please feel free to leave them below. Have a good night. And Susan, I'm sorry that we both had to write checks to pay our taxes today. Don't forget, today is that day. Make sure you get it postmarked today and get it in your mailbox. The major theft that is called taxes. Good night.